Division, welcome. We're very pleased this evening to have, as part of our speaker series, Charles Porter. He's going to speak on really answering a very, very difficult and troubling question, particularly given the drought, the extended heat wave we had last summer, the Bastrop fires, and fires all over our state. Will there be a next Texas water war? So I think he's going to attempt to at least address that question for us this evening. Mr. Porter will explore water in Texas from the time of the Spanish up through the present time. So many public policy decisions are converging in this arena right now, with the recent Supreme Court decision on landowner rights to groundwater under their land and the Lower Colorado River Authority's decision not to send water downstream to rice farmers in South Texas this year. If we were stockbrokers, we might be accused of insider trading because we knew so much was going to go on and had the forethought of having Charles with us. He's a native of Austin and is an instructor of history at St. Edward's University. He's the author of Spanish Water, Anglo Water, which is for sale out in the lobby, and the upcoming Water Rights in Texas, published by Texas A&M University Consortium Press. Among many honors, Charles won the Book Award in 2010 from the Texas Old Mission and Forts Restoration Association for outstanding published book pertaining to Spanish colonial Texas. His book, Spanish Water, Anglo Water, also won the San Antonio Conservation Association Award in 2010 for the best book on the history of San Antonio. Charles researches, writes, and teaches the history of Spanish Catholics, Native Americans, and all immigrant people that formed communities in the southwest borderlands and their influence on Texas law, specifically law relating to water rights, community formation, and real estate transfer. He's testified as a water and real estate expert in more than 200 legal cases since 1987. His passion is field research on the formation and management of the early communities around springs, rivers, and irrigation systems in Texas. We're very honored that some of the research that Charles has done has been right here in the Texas State Archives. He will address the history of Texas water rights and possible future implications. This could not come at a more critical time. Please join me in welcoming Charles Porter.
Thank you, Peggy, and thank you all very much for being here. This is one of my favorite topics in my life. When we talk about water wars, I'm sure you're not a Jesse Ventura conspiracy theorist or anything. I didn't want to alarm anybody, but history tells us in Texas that we've been through a lot of big battles over water. Not like they did in other parts of the United States, but very much here. One of the big reasons is it involves a lot of money, it involves lifestyle changes. I think that water is going to be the key, to me, the key stick in the bundle of sticks that make up all our property rights. Julian Fambro at the Texas A&M Real Estate Center talks a lot about the bundle of sticks that make up property rights, and water's the key to it of all. Now, one of the things I passed out for you was just some general information. I'm not an attorney, by the way. I don't try to be an attorney. I try to look at water from a general point of view, from a layperson's viewpoint who studied a lot. Especially in Texas, water can be rather complicated, and there are a lot of misunderstandings out there. Now, one of my dear friends who passed away recently was Dr. David Weber at SMU, and I think he had, whereas everybody talks about Twain's saying about whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting, I thought David has maybe a better comment here. Water doesn't run downhill, it runs towards money. I think we'll see that happen more and more. Tonight I've got 5 different questions for you that I think we'd like to try to address in my 30-40 minutes. First of all, who are the combatants going to be in this war? Who are they now? Who owns water in Texas, and how is it regulated? and that goes to different groups and different people and agencies involved. How much groundwater regulation is too much? And that's the big question that's going to come up in the Daniel case that you heard about that came out back a couple of Fridays ago. It's going to go right back to Atascosa County, the Jordan courthouse, where I'll probably spend a lot of time whenever it goes back to that trial. The other things I think we'd like to talk about are how do you choose between the combatants, and then if there's any good news at all in the future, and I think there is. Now, through the years, I've written different articles in different magazines other than the book. No matter how you look at it, water in Texas comes back to a focus on San Antonio since the Spanish colonial days. Water was the key to San Antonio being founded. In fact, the Spanish phrase that's always said is that respect for water was bred in the bone of the Spaniard. The Spaniards that came to Texas, the Spaniards that came into the New World, mostly were from the La Mancha, the Bloc, in the central part of Spain. Very dry area, very, very similar to San Antonio as far as climate. They understood about water. They even had water courts back in the 12th and 13th century. They had water mediators back in those days. Water was very important. They had this concept, like the old Roman concept, and that concept was water flows the way it ought to flow. Now, don't try to read all that. That's a translation of what I consider the first water policy letter in Texas. December 25th, 1731, Viceroy Castafuerte said that in a dispute between the first people that came to San Antonio, the Canary Islanders who came in about 10 or 12 years after the first folks came there with the missionaries, he established several things. The first thing he said was there's enough water for everybody, and we're going to take turns with the water. He talked about the fact that the king sent the Canary Islanders here, so missionaries, you've got to realize I can't turn them away. There's enough water in the river to be for everybody. He also said that we're going to conserve and protect the water. So this policy, I think, is one of the first actual written policies. The battles that came about in the Spanish world were not so much over water, but they were over fencing and cattle that got into people's crops along the water. As you can see here, water shapes our space. You'll see the long lots around San Antonio. That's San Jose Mission, Espada, San Juan. Some of these lots down there, in fact 410 goes across here, are still in the same shape they were in the 1740s. It's interesting to see that. All that really made a big difference. In those days, many times the deeds were for your share of the water and the land that went with it. Sometimes the land wasn't completely, totally defined because the water was that important. One thing I think that may come up, the Spaniards classified land in three ways. Land that was irrigable, that's land that had access to an acequia, one of their irrigation ditches or water. Land that was arable, land that had enough adequate rainfall for farming, and land that was pasture land. That became pretty important in a case called Beaumont Plantations in 1961 that Judge Polk was involved in. This is the Espada acequia today. Right over there, there's the dam, the Espada Dam. That acequia is still running. It was built in the 1730s. It's kind of an amazing thing. If you follow it through Mission Bend Barrow Park, and I followed just about all until I jumped the third fence on the private property, and I got a little nervous. But the water still flows. And it's incredible to see it. We just now, after we won the case in 1961, got water back into the San Juan ditch again, which was because when they diverted, when the Corps of Engineers came in and rechannelized the San Antonio River for flooding, they tore down the old San Juan Dam. We've got the water back into it now. To me, this is one of the greatest features in our part of the country, and I hope some of you have seen it. It's the aqueduct over Piedras Creek. It's part of the Espada acequia system. It was built in 1731, 1732. It's had water that's been 6 feet over the top of that thing. Water, of course, when it floods, doesn't just bring water, it brings boulders and tree trunks and everything. And the design of that aqueduct is amazing. It's down below Stinson Field. You can go see it any day of the week. It's, to me, one of the most cherished architectural treasures in Texas. There are 4 more of these under parking lots in downtown San Antonio somewhere we've never seen. It's really amazing. Another spot of long lots in Texas. Again, you can see everybody in the Spanish world got a little piece of the water. Down here, though, we proved in that case that some of these lots that are on the river weren't irrigable lots. They were pasture land lots. That was kind of one of those things that we can talk about at some other time. Now, here's the lot survey, the first survey done by Francois Girard, who ended up being mayor of San Antonio, the first actual survey of downtown San Antonio. Again, you can see the long lot configuration. Everybody got a little piece of the ditch. The land in the middle that's open is was the land that was held by the city or the villa to lease out to people so they could raise money. This man, who we all have heard a lot about around here, was a big player in San Antonio. He started the San Antonio National Bank, and as luck would have it, he ended up owning the first San Antonio Water Company, which is what I write a lot about. Brackenridge never was married. He'd been a surveyor in his earlier life. And I found an odd letter that he'd written his brother in the Austin History Center when he went out to survey and track his brother and speculate in around Junction. And I think it's a key to understanding how important water is to Texas land values. He wrote at the bottom to his brother, you must be careful not to dispose of those sections. It was a 19-section piece of property, 19 square miles, on which the water is unless everything else goes with it, because water renders the land its value. Why is that important? Because when you take away water from the rural people and give it to the urban folks, as much as we'd like to worry about that farmer, whether he makes money or not, our real concern to me is, what do you do to the tax base there, and what do you do to the public services, the schools, to the hospital districts and everything when the water's taken away? And we're going to see that pretty quickly in San Antonio. Now, the first biggest water war in the 19th century was between Brackenridge and the city council. The way it was a private water company because the city didn't have any money. So what they did was contract with the San Antonio Water Works Company. Brackenridge, being the big money in the town with Dr. Herb, ended up owning the company. And the only revenue they had was from individual taps, $9 a year for all the water you wanted at your house, $12 at most. And the city paid $150 a year ostensibly for fire hydrants. Fire hydrants are important because, cities were burning down. That was one of the biggest impetus to put in this system. But the city of San Antonio didn't pay. In fact, this is a judgment Brackenridge got against them. They never paid their very first bill. It was 2 years late on the fire hydrants. So they got a $4,000 judgment against them. Later on, he got a $160,000 judgment against them because his bank backed all their bonds. So the first big water war was this. In fact, every successive, you read in my book, every successive mayor, through all the time Brackenridge owned that water company, used him as the bully pulpit or the victim to say this evil Yankee water monopolizer is who we're against, so vote for us. It was a nightmarish thing. Brackenridge gave Brackenridge Park. Nobody knows much. In 1911, the city council kind of giggled and said, well, let's take the name away from Brackenridge Park. This time Brackenridge was an old man. He wrote to Judge Terrell. You really think it bothers me, but it doesn't. All they've done is mistreat me. So it's an interesting concept about that.